You're not medically qualified.
I work in a prison, and working in a prison means a responsibility to ensure the well-being of inmates. As expected, this includes medical needs. Anything you would see a doctor for, the inmates would as well. The procedure would be to send a medical kit or letter to medical with concerns, symptoms, etc., and request to be seen. For a true emergency, chest pains, trouble breathing, an inmate can declare a medical emergency. This is the equivalent of calling emergency services. When the medical emergency is requested, a radio call is made with the location, nature of the emergency, and the requested type of service needed, such as facility medical staff, custody staff, and outside medical services. When a medical emergency or code is called, the facility is locked down, meaning no movement for the inmates. Lunch being served? Sorry, you will have to wait to eat while this code is going on. Time for you to go to work? Sorry, you're going to lose some pay until this code is clear. As expected, there are incarcerated individuals that are not all of them mentally stable. They will declare a medical emergency for a hurt toe or heartburn. Now, as a regular person, I am aware a hurt toe is not a medical emergency, so I, and many others, would advise the inmate to kite medical and request to be seen. This system seemed to work for a long time, until the administration began to receive complaints from the inmates that staff were ignoring their requests to declare medical emergencies. "You are not medically trained," was the answer we received when we tried to explain the reason for ignoring medical emergencies. "Do your job and declare the medical emergencies." Message received loud and clear. Over the next week, medical emergencies went from 1 a day to 3 to 4 a day. Inmate has a stubbed toe? Medical emergency. Constipated? Medical emergency. Itchy butt? Medical emergency. You get the point. The facility was paralyzed. Medical was mad because they had to respond to every call. Food services were mad because a meal that took an hour to serve was now 2 to 3 hours. The inmates were mad because their yard and gym time was affected.
A week later to the day, an email directive was received to stop declaring medical emergencies and to use our judgment. A few staff members kept it going for another week until it faded out. There was no sorry for the inconvenience or you were right, but that email was so satisfying to receive.
I used to be a mountain rescue medic. I called in a fatality over the radio and was told rather bluntly that I wasn't a doctor and could not pronounce a death. Probably legally true. My reply that the person's head was around 6 feet away from the other bits was met with silence.
I had an argument with a statey once when he wanted us to put an obviously dead body in the ambulance. Not allowed in our state to transport a dead body in an ambulance. So we had a lovely chat about he's too dead for you to have started CPR, but not so dead that we can transport him? Yeah, no. Either you start CPR and come for the ride, so you can explain to the or he waits for the medical examiner.
Ego kept them from implementing this in the first place when it was brought to their attention. But no, let's wait until it cripples the facility and get more complaints before we do anything.
You will sooner win the lottery than you will get an apology from management over their incompetence. Seems to me, there should always be one trained paramedic among the guards to make that judgment. The system is too easy to exploit. Abuse. A guard doesn't like an inmate. Heart attack is not a medical emergency. But if a guard likes the inmate, a stubbed toe is an emergency. I live in small town that is home to a youth correctional facility. It houses non-violent male offenders from ages 18 to 25. They used to have medical personnel, physicians, physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, on site 24/7 who would handle almost everything. In some cases they would call our volunteer first aid squad to transport the patient and a correctional officer to the hospital. This happened 2 or 3 times each month. To save money, they got rid of their off-hours medical staff and the COs dial 911 for everything. The young gentlemen in the facility have found this as a great opportunity to get a change of scenery for a few hours. And if they time it right, they get to enjoy the hospital meal instead of the normal YCF fare. The accompanying COs were happy because they racked up OT sitting in the ER. Pretty soon our volunteers were responding to 2 or 3 calls each day. In many cases while they were busy hauling a patient with a tummy ache to the hospital. True emergencies had to be handled by volunteer squads from a neighboring town. The squad approached the YCF and asked for a donation to defray these extra costs. They were told that since they are a state institution, all funding must come from the state and there is no money for charitable contributions. Especially with all the extra OT they are paying the COs, so the squad told the YCF that while they are happy to serve, due to the large number of non-emergency calls, they will now only respond to calls from a licensed physician. Like magic, they found funds to restore their 24/7 staff. For-profit prisons exacerbate this issue in their quest to reduce costs by not having medical staff available. There are a lot of horror stories about people dying because a guard was not willing to call medical services because they didn't feel as was warranted. I'd love to have seen this continue. I am not medically qualified to make this assessment. Please provide a written and signed indemnification document. This is a tough one. Because there are absolutely plenty of prison staff who will ignore a prisoner requesting medical assistance, and it's led to several high-profile deaths. If anything, erring on the side of caution is appropriate, so I kinda get where the upper levels were coming from. I always just called medical if I didn't think it was an emergency. They would either say tell them to send a kite or tell them they'll have to pay $4 and to come up. The $4 was sometimes a deterrent. Then if something were to happen, I could write in my report who I spoke with and what they said, and it would then be on them. Clearly, if it was a real emergency, I'd call it out. I'd love to hear the inmates' side of this. I expect some bad shit happened with medical emergencies ignored for the policy to change so drastically. Yay, sounds familiar. Runs for no reason. The best one was driving lights and sirens for a cardiac emergency only to find that jail medical put the EKG leads on upside down. I love emergency heartburn. Or like the other night when I told an inmate to put it on the kiosk that he had a headache. And 5 minutes later that headache was now chest pain that I was forced to go and see. Woman facepalming, medium light skin tone. As someone who was an inmate at one point, I find this hilarious. Good one. But why don't they actually train the staff to identify real medical emergencies instead of telling them to use your judgment? Fact is, though, you aren't medically qualified. Depending on the facility, a HS diploma isn't even needed. Just preferred. Did a program in a facility, and even in the couple months I was there I saw astoundingly stupid decisions being made by staff. Severe head wound. Disoriented inmate face down. Blood everywhere. Staff response. Walk, drag him across the compound to go to medical. The crash cart? In a locked room and bolted to the floor. You guys shouldn't be making the call. Should have a trained professional who has an ethical duty every shift, who knows WTF they're doing. And won't make decisions based on things like whether they like an inmate or their charges. Was working in ITU with a patient suffering from a gunshot wound. A visitor came and produced a shotgun and finished the job in the bed space. Walked out. We looked at each other and said, no point in calling a crash for that one. This was in London, UK. Gun crime still very rare. It was Chinese tongs. Reply all. Do I understand you correctly that we should do it like we used to do? Do we still need to be medically trained as you've requested? What was the reason for the change? You are not medically trained. Well, neither is the inmate who is declaring the medical emergency. And they may just have more motive to interrupt the routine than the staff do. Anything you would see a doctor for, the inmates would as well. How enlightened of you. Referring to the inmates, almost as if they are humans. Refreshing. This terrifies me as a non-US resident, which I presume OP is. I just don't feel this is what prisons should operate on.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.